Yo, this is Joe, and we're back again with another tabletop tier ranking. We're on a little bit of a CMON train as far as a publisher goes, and this time we're going to talk about Ankh, God of Egypt, one of the newest games from CMON, and the final game in the trilogy of Blood Rage, Rising Sun, and ultimately Ankh. All designed by Eric Lang, and again published by CMON or CMON, however you prefer to pronounce their name. I know they flop back and forth. And today we're going to talk about ranking all of the gods that you can play as in Ankh, Gods of Egypt. We're going to start off today in alphabetical order with Amun. And again, I will just caveat, please forgive me for any pronunciation mishaps. I know that I have a little bit of a struggle with that sometimes, so feel free to correct me in the comments if you want to. So Amun is the god, the hidden one is effectively what he's called. Basically, his special power allows you to play 2 battle cards once per conflict. So if you're not familiar with the game of Ankh, each time you reach a conflict phase, you go through each region on the board and you resolve the conflict there. Now, once per that phase, there might be 6 or 7 different conflicts in a conflict phase. So one time he can play 2 battle cards, which is pretty powerful. It allows you to really take advantage of one particular region that maybe you're a little bit weak in, and it can allow you to win that conflict in that region. Whereas you can only play 1 battle card normally, and in regions you're strong in, you would just want to play 1 battle card. So Amun's pretty straightforward. He's one of the gods that comes in the base box. And frankly, I think he's pretty middle of the road. So we're going to give Amun a B ranking. Next up is Anubis. And Anubis is Judge of the Dead, is the god of the dead, kind of. There's a few different gods of the dead in Egyptian lore. Anubis is really the judge of the dead. And Anubis, his special power is whenever enemy warriors are killed in a conflict, you can trap 1 killed warrior on your player board. And for as many warriors that you have trapped on your player board for a total of 3, you get +1 strength for Anubis when you have those figures trapped. So basically, if you have 1 figure trapped, you get +1 strength. If you have 2, 3, you get the picture here. Now, this is pretty powerful because normally your god figure that's out on the board contributing to conflict is only worth 1 strength for any god. So, right, that's pretty general across whatever god you're playing. But this gives Anubis some extra strength, which can be game changing, to be honest. Gives you the advantage in a particular region. And if anybody wants to get their warriors back from you, so let's say you've gained 3 total warriors, you got +3 strength for Anubis, pretty strong. Somebody wants to resummon the warrior that you took from them in that battle to gain you additional strength, they actually have to pay you 1 follower, which followers are the currency in Ankh, God of Egypt, to take that warrior back. So they have to pay an extra fee to get that warrior. So either you're getting extra strength or you're getting extra cash flow. So it's pretty good for Anubis. And I think that makes Anubis definitely better than Amun. I think it makes Anubis an A tier god. To get that extra strength, it just really makes you quite powerful. And strength is a big deal. It's hard to come by at times. So being able to use your god figure in that way is a really good benefit. Next up is Bastet, the lioness goddess. At the start of the game and each conflict, Bastet can secretly put out these cat figures on a monument, each in a different region. This is kind of a bluffing sort of mechanism a little bit. On the bottom of each cat, they have either a +1, a +3, or an asterisk. And what that means is that cat can give Bastet +1 strength in a region. A different one could give her +3 strength in a region, or the asterisk means 0. So when Bastet battles in those regions, the strength is added to Bastet's total strength, again giving her a benefit in trying to win the conflict in that particular region. Now, once per turn, before or after an action, an opponent can choose to reveal an adjacent cat to one of their figures. So if you have a figure adjacent to a monument that has a cat, you can choose to reveal that cat. If it is the asterisk, the figure dies. So you lose your warrior or whoever is out there. You wouldn't lose your god because gods can't be removed from the board, but your figure might die. And then if you do reveal the asterisks, all the other cats get replaced on the board. So, if you have a 1 in 3 chance of revealing the asterisks, you have a 2 in 3 chance of revealing something good, which I'll explain that in a second. But if you reveal the asterisks, you lose a character, and all the cats get to be reshuffled by the player that is playing Bastet. So it's a high risk, high reward kind of thing. The odds are good, but still not great. It's tough as an opponent to decide if you really want to take that risk. But if you do reveal one of the strength addition modifiers, so the +1 or the +3, then that cat gets removed from the board. So you have a good chance of being able to remove some strength from Bastet, but you could really hurt yourself and even others around you that might be competing with Bastet if you reveal the asterisks. So as Bastet, it's really fun to be able to play that kind of bluffing game, try and decide, do I want to put additional strength from one of my cats in a region that I'm going to need the strength, or am I trying to play the mental game with my opponents so that they'll reveal the asterisks and lose a figure in a region that you might be, in the middle of the fence, trying to win that region in a conflict. It's really fun. It's really strong. It's really a mental game when it comes to your opponents. It's tough for them to decide whether or not they want to reveal your cats. And, I think it's a really neat mechanism and unique mechanism for the god powers in this game. So I think that makes Bastet really strong and allows Bastet to be ranked as an A-tier god in this game. Hathor is next, goddess of love. When sacrificing followers, which means spending followers, so again, followers are the currency in this game. When you're spending followers for anything, whether it's building a monument, whether it's upgrading your Ankh powers or anything else, you can sacrifice 1 extra follower, so pay 1 additional currency. And if so, you can immediately summon a figure adjacent to one of your figures or monuments. Additionally, if you have guardians, which are the monsters in this game that you can obtain and give you extra benefits and powers, you may also do that with a guardian. So not just a figure or a warrior, it could also be a guardian that maybe you just obtained, right? So maybe you just paid to get your guardian out on the board, you can do an extra guardian. This is really strong, in my opinion. It takes a whole turn to be able to get just 1 figure out on the board, and to be able to bring 2 figures, or a figure and a guardian out onto the board with just 1 turn. That's really strong, in my opinion, and it can really turn the tide in some of the more contested regions. So it's tough to make this call, because I think that, in my opinion, that having more presence out on the board is really like a strength in this game. It really makes you strong from, event to event, between conflicts. If you can keep a lot of figures out on the board, it's hard for people to do anything against you. They have to team up against you, and still, if you are, doubling your presence, or doubling the increase of presence compared to anybody else, it's gonna give you an advantage. So I'm gonna give Hathor the S-tier ranking. I think Hathor is really strong. I know it's a simple ability and simple power, but it you get to pay for something, and you pay a little bit more to get a big advantage. It's a small cost for a big advantage. Horus is next. Horus is the god of the sky. I'm going to give Horus a little bit of some bonus points, because I think Horus has the coolest miniature in the game. The miniatures in the game are amazing, as always, from CMON, but especially in Ankh, because you do have normal miniature warriors that are unique for each god's faction, but you also have these enormous, huge god miniatures that go out on the board. Way bigger than the normal size miniature. It's definitely thematic for the game, and they are so well done, so detailed, and Horus in particular has huge wings, this giant spear. I just love Horus miniature. So a few bonus points there to take into consideration. But Horus's power is that at the start of conflict, he can choose up to 2 regions to place 1 eye token. Now, Horus starts with these 2 eye tokens. So that's at the start of a conflict event. He does that. And then at the start of a battle in any of the regions that he put the tokens in, right? So again, during conflict, you resolve each region and they go from 1 to whatever number. And when it comes to the region that has an eye in it, Horus can take back the eye token to his player board and name a card to exclude from the battle. Except for Cycle of Ma'at, which is the card that allows you to take all your cards back into your hand. And this card is excluded from the upcoming battle from all players, including Horus. So basically, Horus has a way of picking out special regions during a conflict event and identifying, okay, my enemies might want to play a certain card, or I have these cards left, and I know my enemy has 1 card that they're likely to use. So I'm gonna put an eye token in there and I'm gonna exclude that 1 beneficial card from my enemy. I've already used that, so it's not gonna impact Horus potentially. Even if it does, Horus might have a strategy that doesn't involve one of the cards that he has in his hand, so he just eliminates that. It really, if you're paying attention, if you're really trying to determine what your enemy in the battles are going to do, what would help them win the battle, you can eliminate that card and give yourself a great advantage to going into battle and winning that particular region. It could be a very important region for helping you to win the game. It could be a region that's highly contested, and maybe you're just trying to stir up the puzzle, to impact the leader negatively or something like that, or keep someone down in the devotion track as well. So it can be very powerful from that perspective. There's only 2 of them though, and typically there's, like 5, 6, 7 regions of conflict. So especially as you get towards the end of the game, Horus can really, his power can kind of diminish in the effectiveness of it. It still helps you win the battle, and, assuming that you're understanding what your opponents are trying to go for, your eye token will be beneficial, but it gets less powerful as the game goes on. If you're not reading the other players right, it can be completely useless, right? You're getting rid of a card that you think they're trying to use and they're not trying to use it. And frankly, if you don't win the battle in the region that you have the eye tokens, then again, it's pretty useless. So for that reason, I'm going to give Horus a B tier. I would almost consider giving him a C tier, but like I said, those bonus points from the miniature, yeah, he's going to stay in that middle of the row B tier and hang out there with Amun. Next up is Isis. Isis as well has a really cool miniature. Not as cool as Horus, but still up there. Isis is Queen of the Throne. That is her title from the Egyptian mythology. Basically, figures owned by Isis adjacent to enemy figures cannot be killed by anything unless Isis allows it. So Isis wants to be close to other opponents' figures. You want to be tight in there in other regions, because then if you go in there and you battle in a particular region and you lose, your figures can be saved and not destroyed. Because in general, in Ankh, if you lose the battle in a region, all of your figures get removed from that region, except unless you have your god figure in there. But with that being said, this can help you to say, hey, I know I'm probably going to lose this particular battle in this region. I'm going to make sure all my figures that are in that region are adjacent to enemy figures. That way, once I lose, I can still maintain my presence in that region for the next conflict, and I'm going to try and win that battle in that region at a later time. I think this is pretty good. It's something that your opponents have to be aware of, because as an opponent, if you have Isis figures next to you and you're pretty confident you're going to win a region, you might need to take some actions to move your figures away from the Isis figures in your region, so that when you win the battle in that region, you get the most out of the battle, right? You get rid of Isis's presence in your region. Otherwise, again, you might lose that region in the future to Isis when they bring more presence into that region, even after losing the battle. So Isis is pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with what I think can really be beneficial. It's kind of a late game ability a little bit. I think that you have to kind of play it pretty smart in slow play, and it's kind of a build up type of power. So I'm going to give Isis a B. It can be powerful if you can get away with it, but if your opponents are paying attention, your power can sometimes be useless. You know, if someone really just takes their time and makes sure that none of Isis's figures are adjacent to theirs, they're not going to be saved from losing a battle, and Isis is going to have a tough time keeping the presence in those regions that she loses, and it's going to be tough sledding from there because everybody else's powers are a little bit stronger. But if you can pull it off, it's going to be really beneficial, especially in the late game, because you're going to get a really good presence out on the board. It's going to be really tough for enemies to not be adjacent to you in a region, and it's really going to swing some of the power your way and devotion your way. Osiris is next, and if Horus's miniature was not the best in the game, Osiris's might be. Osiris is this enormous figure. The detail is incredible. Osiris is actually the god of the dead. So there's skulls and all this cool stuff on his miniature, and just it's overpowering to the presence on the board. It's really awesome. So I will again give the caveat that Osiris gets a bit of a bonus because of the miniature as well. But when Osiris loses a battle during conflict, he can place or move one of 3 underworld tokens into empty non-water spaces of any particular region. So basically what that means is that Osiris has these 3 green that match his color underworld tokens. They occupy an entire hex on the board. Again, when he loses the battle, he can take one of those, he can place a new one into a region, he can move one that's already been on the board, but they can't go on water spots, is basically the gist of that. Now, you might be asking, okay, what's the benefit of these underworld tokens? Now, one of the benefits are that the enemy figures cannot end movement on those hexes, and they cannot build monuments on those hexes. However, Osiris can, right? So it's basically removing one potential spot from any particular region and reserving it for you as Osiris. So that's pretty beneficial. One hex might not seem like a lot, but like I said earlier, when you get to the later game and there's a ton of different regions, you can take up a lot of real estate in a region with just one hex. The other benefit of this hex is that Osiris can summon one extra figure on one of those hexes, right? So whether you have 1 or 3, when you summon new figures, you can summon 1 extra on any of the 1, 2, or 3 underworld tokens that you have out there on a hex. This is one of my favorite powers in the game. It not only is really tough to combat against as an opponent of Osiris, but the strategy as an Osiris player that goes into, okay, where do I place my underworld tokens? Should I move an underworld token into a different region that's now more important to me? I've taken control of my original region I had an underworld token in. Do I want to move this one to a different one that I'm trying to now sway to my side? Or do I place a new one and keep my old one? That kind of strategy and figuring out how you're going to play that is really fun. I love that aspect, and I think it's really thematic for Osiris as well as being the god of the dead. And then again, kind of like I talked about with Hathor, having additional summons when you bring figures out onto the board is really powerful. I think that Osiris is definitely the best god in the base box for sure. Maybe the best god in the game, definitely an S tier ranking. Next up is, and again, pronunciation apologies, either Ptah or Ptah. I don't know if the P is silent, but Ptah or Ptah. And this, I'm gonna say Ptah is the creator / builder from Egyptian mythology. And his power is after opponents build monuments, they must give 1 follower, so again, 1 currency, to Ptah if possible. So basically, Ptah is the real estate agent, for lack of a better term, of of Ankh, and when an opponent builds, they must give you a follower if they have any followers available, right? So if you're broke and you build, then you don't go negative or anything like that. You just have to pay if possible. And then after you as Ptah build a monument, you gain all exalted follower tokens from your player board. And what that means is that you get these tokens, there's 2 of them, and instead of worth 1 currency, they're worth 2 currencies apiece. So when you build a monument, you automatically could get a potential +4 in your currency. That's pretty good, right? That's a huge boost from when other people get followers. It's a really nice added bonus. So Ptah's kind of like about, I want people to be building monuments, and I want to be building monuments, so I'm bringing in all these followers and having all this cash flow so that I can really excel my actions and what I'm trying to do out on the board. And then when you spend one of the exalted follower tokens, they return to your player board. So, you want to really make sure that after you build a monument, you're spending those extra exalted follower tokens as quickly as possible, and making sure that you're spending them absolutely before you build any more monuments, for sure. You want to maximize the benefit of building a monument and get that +4 to your currency at the time. So Ptah's not really much of someone that I would consider a fighting kind of god in this game. I would consider Ptah someone that's kind of about economy, and you just want your monuments, get your monuments out on the board, as many as you can. Try and make sure that you're competing with others for different monument types. There's 3 different monument types in the game, right? There's pyramids, obelisks, and temples. You want to make sure that you're constantly building monuments and getting them out there to compete with people, because then your opponents will also want to build monuments. And like I said earlier, that's going to bring currency into you as well. So it's really about trying to create a sort of environment on the board that's beneficial to you, that's feeding you currency and allowing you to multiply your actions and the benefits out of them. Again, I think because Ptah is not really a conflict type of god or faction, that's kind of a negative. So I don't know that he can kind of be in the top tier of gods. It's tough to win with him at times, because if people really, your opponents really try to avoid building monuments and not feed Ptah extra currency, it can really bring him down. So I like the idea. I'm just not sure that Ptah can really compete with some of these other gods. So Ptah is going to be a C tier ranking. Next is Ra. The sun and the light is who Ra is. When Ra summons figures, he may attach 1 sun token to that figure, which makes them radiant. Gets 1 extra devotion when dominating a region, or when battle is won with a radiant figure, right? When you're dominating a region, that means that you have no other enemy presence in there. So if you effectively win that region by dominating it, you get an extra devotion, which is an extra victory point, which is really, really good. Getting devotion can be very tough at times. Or when you win a battle with a radiant figure, right? So you can have a total of 3 radiant figures. You're going to want them spread out in different regions, and you're going to want them in regions that you're going to win the battles in. That way, you are going to double your output, or at least give it your output of victory points a boost when you win the battles in those regions, right? This can be huge point swings, right? This is especially beneficial if you're chasing the leader, or if you're trying to make sure that you're not forgotten, or you don't want to be a part of the merge, you're trying to get from 3rd to 2nd. This can really give you a huge points boost and really bring you into a position where you can catch the runaway leader, you can make a move towards the end of the game, or you can even put yourself way out ahead early in the game if you're able to take advantage of the sun tokens. I think this makes Ra really good. You have to be careful, obviously, because if your other players see that you're putting out the sun tokens too early before a conflict event happens, they might target that region and say, okay, we can't let Ra win that region. We can't let Ra win that battle. We're going to team up against him and make sure he doesn't win the battles or the regions that he has radiant figures in. So that can be tough sometimes, but I still think that even at that point, you can really develop your strategy around it. You can see it coming, and that makes Ra an S tier god for me. We're getting down to our last few here. Next up is Set, god of chaos. For an opponent's figure, when it comes to Set, guardian, warrior, or even monument, if it's adjacent to Set himself, the god figure, they're considered to belong to Set during battle. Additionally, those figures are not killed if Set wins. So basically, Set can position himself, his god figure, into a place where when you are counting up the strength in a particular battle, Set can use the strength of his opponents against them, essentially. So, right, he's creating chaos. When an opponent thought they had a certain amount of strength, he basically takes that strength away from them and adds the strength to his strength. This is really great. This is a very strong power. I think that it's not as great as a lot of the other powers because it's just one figure that you can do this with. So it's just one region that this is impacted in, because if you know how adjacency works in Ankh, you can't have adjacency across regions. So you can't put Set on the border of a region and have him next to things in both regions and get the benefit. It's just one region. That's how adjacency works. So it's really not that powerful. I mean, if you have one important region that you need to steal from somebody, Set's gonna almost guarantee that. But other than that, it's only impacting one region, and that might be good early game, but it's not that good early game. So I think Set's gonna have to be a C tier ranking. Next up is Thoth. Thoth is the god of knowledge and has another really cool miniature. Not quite as cool as Horus or Osiris, but it's definitely up there as one of the best miniatures in the game. Now, in each of Thoth's battles, before battle cards are revealed, Thoth can make one guess about one card from one opponent, so only one opponent. If you're battling 3 or 4 people, you can only choose one, and you have to say, hey, I think you're gonna play X card, right? And you actually are betting on this by putting one follower on the scale on your player board. Now, if you are incorrect in what card you are guessing, that player gets all the followers that you have on the scale. However, you can be correct and keep the followers that are on your scale. Now, why is that beneficial to me, right? Well, what's beneficial is if you are guessing correctly a bunch throughout a conflict event, and you're building up the amount of followers you're putting on that scale, right? So you put down 1 for your first guess, you're correct. The follower stays there. Your next battle, you guess correct again. 2 followers stay there, right? So the benefit that you're going to see here for you is increasing, but also if you guess incorrectly at any time, the person who you guess incorrectly against gets all the followers there. So you're potentially increasing the reward for somebody else if you get it wrong. But if you continue to get it right and you're building up followers there, at the end of the conflict event, so after all the battles are resolved, you discard all the followers on the scale, so you lose the money, but you gain 1 devotion for each discarded follower, which can be huge, right? So you're getting victory points for each follower that you discard from your board. This is a really, really fun mechanism. I think this is the most fun, unique, interesting mechanism of all the gods in the game. You are essentially betting that you're going to be able to guess one of the cards that somebody's going to play. It might be that you know they only have 1 card left, and you know it's the card cycle of Ma'at that's going to allow them to pick up all their cards. That's an easy, correct guess. But a lot of the times, people are going to have multiple cards in their hand, right? So the odds can be against you, but if you're paying attention, if you're really understanding the flow of the game, if you're understanding the strategies of your opponents, you can be involved in many different battles. You might lose the battles, but who cares if you lose the battles as long as you guess the cards correctly. So if you're building up followers on that scale and you add 4 points at the end of a conflict event, or even 3 points at the end of a conflict event, that is going to be incredibly beneficial. It's going to be a huge boost to your chances of winning the game and your chances of having a lead and being the one that people are trying to chase, right? On the other hand, you can lose big also, right? Let's say you're just not guessing correctly, you've given up on it, you've trying to cut your losses, then you essentially don't have a hero power. Or if you say build up 3 and then you incorrectly guess, you give 3 currency to the other player and you get no victory points at the end of that conflict event. So it's really high risk, high reward, but super fun to play. You know, you have to have the right mindset. You can't be mad if you lose and you guess incorrectly, right? You got to have a good mindset going into this. But if you're looking for something really interesting, something really fun, unique, I think that Thoth is the god for you. And because Thoth has such a high risk, high reward, I don't think he can be, again, in that kind of top tier of gods. But I'm going to give Thoth the B rating. You know, he has a cool miniature. He's very fun. He's really swingy on whether or not you can be successful with him. So B tier ranking for Thoth. And last but not least, we have Sobek. Sobek's really cool, the crocodile god. And for Sobek, you may occupy water spaces, and water spaces count as each region they are adjacent to, right? So you can very easily move between regions. And he's the only god that can occupy water spaces. So that already gives him a benefit under that circumstance. Now, if you dominate or win a battle with Sobek, the Sobek figure himself, so he has to be in the region that you win the battle with, you may place a water token in that region in an empty space adjacent to a river, water, camel, or external border, and then you would remove the camel at the edge of that space, right? So basically, if you win with Sobek in Sobek's region, you can flood a space on that region's hexes. So that's really cool. You can essentially just give yourself another free tile, claim another and reserve another tile in a region just for yourself. The one thing that you can't do is you can't split a region with that ability, but being able to do that and make sure that you're flooding and impacting the board in a way that it's eliminating real estate for the other players, that can be really detrimental and disruptive to strategies and plans for different players in the game. So Sobek's pretty cool in that respect. You know, since he's the only god that can play in water, I think they decided that we don't want to make his power too overpowering. But it can really reshape the game. It can change the game for what you might be used to if you've never played with or against Sobek. And it can, like I said, it can be very disruptive. So I think Sobek is going to be in that B tier ranking. You know, not too good, but not too bad because it is wholly unique to him. There's not really any crossover with any of the other gods' powers. And there you have it. We've ranked all of the gods in Ankh, Gods of Egypt. And again, this is published by CMON Games, designed by Eric Lang. It's the third in the trilogy with Blood Rage and Rising Sun. It's a really fun game if you haven't had a chance to try it. Don't let all the reviews, mainly negative reviews, about the merge mechanism deter you from giving it a try. I personally think that as long as you have your expectations set that the merge mechanism is coming, it's really not that bad. And you know, I think it can be fun. I've seen a lot of merged gods come back and almost win the game, so it can be fun as well if you have the right mindset. So definitely would recommend giving it a try. And thank you for joining me for this video. I really appreciate all the comments and feedback that people have been giving me. I definitely appreciate the requests as well. There's definitely more tabletop tier rankings to come. We're going to be hopping all over the place with all kinds of games. I would love to hear more suggestions, and I'd also love to interact with anybody else more. If you have the time, you know, I'd really appreciate you to subscribe to the channel if you like this content. Like I said, there's more to come. I also am out there on all the social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Definitely give me a like, follow, subscribe out there. Give me a thumbs up if you like the content. You know, and again, appreciate you being here, and you know, hope to see you next time. Until then, take care.